Hello, everybody, and welcome inside episode 0 of a brand new podcast called That Movie Is Ours Now. That's Spider-Man, that's a one-handed Morgan Freeman bobblehead, and my name is David Sugarman. And the aim of this podcast is to talk to new and interesting people every episode about the different movies that have changed, impacted, influenced their lives in some way, big or small. Now, I don't want this podcast to be too much about just me and the movies that I like to watch and am interested in, but I did want to have an introductory episode to let you guys get to know me just a little bit, the type of movies that I like to watch, and more importantly, why movies have played such a massive role in who I am and a big part of my life and why I want to do this in the first place. So without further ado, this is episode 0 of That Movie Is Ours Now. You're that spider guy.
Spider bed.
Huh?
Of Spider-Man.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
So let's get to it. This is episode 0 of That Movie Is Ours Now, and this is something I'd been thinking about doing for a while, and I'm really excited to get going. So I want you guys to know me just a little bit. Right now, I live in a town called Mandan, North Dakota. If you don't know Mandan, you might know Bismarck. It's the capital of the state. I live in the town pretty much next door to that, and I work for a company called Beck Sports. I do sports broadcasting there, mainly play-by-play. If you're not a sports fan, essentially that's the guy who, when you turn on the ball game and there's somebody who's usually narrating the action, that's me.
Walters, leading scorer in the nation. 3 examples why.
It's what I do here for local high school teams and college teams, and something I absolutely love doing. I love sports and I love storytelling. A big reason that I like movies so much, because movies are just big stories. And so sports are a massive part of my life as well. I'm originally from New Jersey, a town called Bridgewater. So I grew up rooting for the New Jersey Nets, now the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Giants. And then I went on to go to Indiana University. So I love the movie Hoosiers and I love the Hoosiers themselves. Couple of good sports movies if you're into that. Of course, there's Hoosiers, and if you're going to Indiana, if you're at Indiana, if you're an alumni and you haven't seen Breaking Away, go watch Breaking Away. All about the Little 500 and a love letter to Indiana University, but more on that on another day. So why I wanted to do this, I love movies. They impact who I am and inform the guy and the man that I certainly am trying to be and that I want to be. And sometimes we all fall short of those ideals, but they give us something to strive to. Sometimes I just love them for escapism, and sometimes I love them because you can get involved in a world that you know absolutely nothing about. Sometimes it's gangster films like The Godfather, Goodfellas. Other times you take a movie like City of God, which I believe is the poor area. I believe that movie's set in Brazil. Well, I'm not from a poor area in Brazil and didn't grow up in poverty and things like that. And so it can also take you to worlds that you know nothing about that are real. And of course, it can take you to fantastical worlds, space, and place where we believe in wizards and witches and fairies and superheroes and all that great stuff. So there's really not a bad reason to enjoy movies. And my interests kind of run the gamut. As you can see here, we've got everything from Austin Powers to The Deer Hunter down here with The Dark Knight. So I love superhero movies. As you can see, like I said, we have Batman. I love most of Spider-Man and Marvel films. And there's not a lot of movies that I won't give a chance. I love horror movies. I like a good romance. I did You've Got Mail for the very first time last night. Is it the same thing in Sleepless in Seattle? Yes. Is it better? I'm going to say yes. Hopefully that starts some very friendly fights over this podcast. Some other favorites. I love The Wrestler. I was talking about serious dramas. I love Wedding Crashers when you go to goofball comedies.
It's wedding season, kid.
So I wanted to talk today a little bit about a movie that for me is twofold. One, I think it's the movie that I always credit changing my love of movies from just sort of something I was interested in and liked going to the theater to sort of a passion and really at this point an obsession. And the second point about it is also proof to me a movie doesn't have to be an award winner or a classic to mean something to you. And for me, that movie is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, this podcast, like I said, isn't going to be all about my interests. And even though I love superhero movies, if they're not your thing, don't worry, because not every episode is going to be about that.
Stay with me, Max.
But I want to talk about that movie in particular. If you're a superhero fan, you might be familiar with that film as being kind of a dud.
What's your name again?
It was not a movie that bombed, but there's a reason that there's no The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and that we had to wait until Spider-Man No Way Home recently to get Andrew Garfield back into the tights. And the movie has got some clear problems that we'll be completely upfront about, right? We've got underdeveloped villains. We've got a storyline that's kind of all over the place and just unfocused. Some things that don't quite add up. And it's just a movie that has some fat on it that could have been trimmed. Having said all that, why do I love that movie? Why does that movie mean a lot to me? I always loved going to the theater when I was a kid. But this was the first movie where I did something that now I do all the time without hesitating, but I had never done before. And that's go to the theater by myself. Now, I do that, like I said, all the time now. But at the time, I was usually bugging a friend or one of my parents to go. And I really wanted to go see this movie. Couldn't get anybody to see it with me. And so I felt really bad that I couldn't get somebody to see it with me. I felt kind of like a loser about the whole thing. I was a senior in high school, and I decided I would take my car and go see the movie by myself, as bad as that made me feel. And it made me feel really bad. I drove to the theater feeling bad about myself, and I waited in line for my ticket for one and snacks just for me. And I went into what was a pretty empty theater, as I recall, at the Manville Movie Theater in New Jersey. And the movie had been out for about a month or two, I think, so nobody was really there to see it on a weekday afternoon. And I felt really bad. Who can't get someone to go see a movie with them, let alone an action flick, a Spider-Man movie. And then the movie started, and all of that feeling kind of down and feeling like a loser, all of that just washed away. And I was just somewhere else. It felt like somebody had made something for me. And it was just the height of escapism for me. I still think, despite some issues with the story and the villains, that movie is beautifully shot and some awesome effects. And I would argue maybe the best looking Spider-Man movie. It just made me feel really good about myself, and everything that had been bothering me that day just didn't matter. And Spider-Man swinging through the city and picking up, Max, who of course goes on to be Electro, and him telling him,
I'm a nobody.
Hey, you're not a nobody. You're somebody. Like that. All right, listen to me. Now I need you. You're my eyes and ears out here. Okay. All right?
All right.
I needed to hear that day, because that's how I felt. And I just had an ear-to-ear grin pretty much the entire film and walked out feeling really good about myself. And that was the moment that, for me, movies and with the movie-going experience, if you can go to your local theater and see the new movie that's out, I always think you should do that before you stream it. I understand not everyone has that luxury, and sometimes it's more expensive, but if you can swing it, I always say to do that, because that's the moment things changed for me. And always feel like movies are there for you no matter what. If you're having a bad day and you need an escape, whether it's the silliest of silly comedies, the biggest of explosions and action and superheroes and that sort of world, or something more down to earth in a movie about real life, or romance, or heartbreak, or loss, mourning, whatever it might be, there's a movie that is there for you. And I think we all have a few movies that have affected us in that way. And I want to go talk to people and find out the movies that affected them. in some way, big or small. So I'm really, really excited to get this going. Every other Friday is when we're going to be releasing our episodes. Might be on a few extra platforms, but right now, for sure, it'll be released on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That will be for the audio. We'll also be putting this with a video on a YouTube channel that will just be titled That Movie Is Ours Now. If you're ever interested in where I'm at, what I'm doing, both in my job and this podcast, on Twitter at David_Sugarman2 and Instagram, David_Sugarman. There's also a really great app called Letterboxed. And what Letterboxd is, and they're not paying me at all for this, by the way. They don't even know who I am, more than likely. Pretty much a movie diary. So every time I watch a movie, I'm able to log it. So if you're ever interested in what I'm watching, as soon as the credits are rolling, I go to Letterboxd and I like the movie, or I don't like the movie, but I say that I've watched it. I don't normally leave a review, but maybe now that we have this, I'll start doing that. So Letterboxd, my account there is DavidAlex24. So if you are ever interested in what I'm watching, need a suggestion, want to talk about something that I recently watched, hit me up, let me know. Again, DavidAlex24. We have some awesome guests in the upcoming weeks. Like we said, every other Friday is when we're going to be posting this. And we've already got a couple in the cam. Talking to Ben Portnoy, who writes about South Carolina football for the state newspaper in South Carolina. All things Top Gun, the new one, Maverick, as well as of course, the original, the blending of the two and how that's become such a generational movie and all the things tied up in that. Talk to Dr. Galen Clavio, who's the director of sports media at Indiana University, a former professor of mine. We talk a lot of 90s classics, The Usual Suspects, Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, which I watched for the first time a few days ago and getting ready to talk to him. Another reason I'm excited about this, getting to watch movies that maybe I'd been putting off or haven't watched or even maybe haven't heard of. Of course, I'd heard of Pulp Fiction, but extend my own interests selfishly as well and see some great cinema. So this has been episode 0 of That Movie Is Ours Now. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you come along for the ride. Like I said, feel free to follow me on any of my social media platforms. Feel free to slide in my DMs and let me know what you're watching, what you want to watch, and any suggestions you might have for me, because I'm always open. I am always trying to watch something new. So this has been episode 0 of That Movie Is Ours Now. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you very soon.
Guess I'll see you in the movies.